Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. We have welcomed David Eby as the new Premier of British Columbia with the BC NDP government, and he's done a lot of cool things as far as housing is concerned, and some other issues. One of the issues that has recently just passed, and it is something that we have to ask about as the public. Where Bill 36 was concerned, and how it is going to force vaccinations of other healthcare workers besides medical doctors and nurses, and that it is asking all the colleges and boards of all of these different types of like naturopaths, acupuncture, all these different colleges, and to register under a regulatory system, and with that regulatory system, that it becomes a requirement to maintain your license that you get vaccinated for, say, flu, the same as any other healthcare worker, or in this case, more importantly, that it requires that all naturopaths and acupuncture providers and other things along with that they have to be vaccinated for COVID-19. Many of these types of workers and providers probably have done things to ensure their immune system is strong and healthy to protect against COVID-19. Some have been vaccinated, maybe not all, but should there be a mandate in place, like Bill 36, that requires it to be part of your licensing in order to practice any type of wellness to people, that you have to have a vaccination? So that has actually been put in place, and I'm sure that most of these workers are given some sort of grace period to become compliant, as well as all of the different colleges to become compliant. And the thing is we need to decide as the voting public, should this sort of compliance be necessary, and should it be allowed? So, something to think about as we as another election comes up in the next year or so. So, we're also going to be listening to a celebration of the anniversary of Bill 47 that moved healthcare support workers from out of the private sector back into the public sector, in which case they're receiving much needed benefits and pay raises. So let's listen to today's show.
This guy. He was elected to represent the Vancouver Point Grey riding in 2013. He has served as Attorney General from 2017 until earlier this year. He added Minister responsible for housing to the mix in 2020. And just a few days ago, was sworn in as BC's 37th Premier. He's promised a very clear mission to improve housing affordability in communities throughout the province, rolling out new legislation on basically his first day on the job, first full working day on the job just yesterday, and sees our sector as a key partner in helping to realize that goal. So again, please help me welcome Premier Eby to Mount Clark.
It's okay, Jill. I'm still getting used to the title as well. It's been a really wonderful and high-speed 4 days since my swearing in, and I am so delighted to be here with you. It feels a bit like coming home to talk to you. But before I get any further, I'll begin by recognizing that we're here on the territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and express my appreciation for the opportunity to live, work, and play on those Indigenous lands that we call Vancouver. The reason why I feel like I'm coming home here is, there are people in this room that I worked with 20 years ago when I was working in the downtown east side, and I can't believe that was 20 years ago, but it was. And housing has been central to our journey together, advocacy for housing, for everybody to have a decent home in our province. So when I heard that there was an opportunity to be here, thank you to Jill and Tom, Housing Central, Margaret, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm going to, because I'm feeling like a bit nostalgic being here, I'm going to share a story with you about how important it is to be in government and to be able to make a difference in people's lives. From just my own experience, and all of my colleagues can tell you very similar stories about their files. But for me, the story that really illustrates it is a story about when I was in my early days at Pivot. We had gotten a grant from, Law Foundation, gave us some funding to do work on housing. And they used that funding to hire me as a lawyer, to be an advocate on housing in the downtown east side. And one of the calls that I got as a lawyer at that organization was there's a building called the Burns Block. And the Burns Block, one of the old SROs in the downtown east side, beautiful old building. It was in real disarray. It had been purchased by a guy, he had no idea what he was buying. He had no experience running an SRO in the downtown east side. And very, very quickly, he lost control of the building. There were rooms being used for drug trafficking. The building was falling apart. He was neck deep in enforcement orders from Vancouver Fire Department. He didn't know what he was doing. And it got to the point where, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I get a call that Vancouver Fire and City is down at the Burns Block building, and they're condemning the building. They say the building is no longer safe for tenants. And there are people who have been living in that building for decades. And one of those people was Veronica Crow-Eagle, who had been a tenant in that building for more than a decade. All of the tenants were brought out onto the sidewalk. They were given an hour's notice that their homes were going to be locked up, that the building wasn't safe for occupation. They grabbed a few of their belongings. And the landlord, on hearing this news, rushed to Home Depot to buy plywood and tools. And it wasn't to fix up the fire code violations that he knew were there. It was to board up the front door, because he was relieved, The building was worth more without the tenants in it, and he had lost control of the building. This was a solution to his problem. And the tenants were collateral damage. They were moved off to the Salvation Army building to try to figure out where they were going to go. And as a lawyer who was there, and I was like, hey, I'm a lawyer from Pivot. I'm here to help you. Is there anything I can do? And they're like, well, what can you do? Can you get us our house back? I was like, not, we can go to the residential tenancy branch, and it's going to take a couple months, and maybe we'll get an order. And they're like, and then it's like, how do I get in touch with you? And they're like, we don't know. This is our address. There's just like a feeling of total powerlessness to stop this slow motion tragedy that was rolling out. And the building ultimately was purchased and renovated, and as housing minister, we had the opportunity to buy that building back and to reopen it as housing for women and children fleeing violence. And it's called Veronica's Place. And the difference... That is the difference between being in opposition and being in government. Watching bad government policy, and it's not bad because people are malicious. It's bad just because it's not structured in a way to consider the human cost. Watch it play out and feel essentially powerless except through a court process that might take years. And being able to take action that people can see and touch and feel and live in that makes lives better for people. I know that you live in that world. Non-profit housing providers are not in some kind of theoretical housing think tank. Well, you are in some of them, frankly. But you're delivering on the ground in ways that your community can see and touch and feel. In the community of Vernon, your work reduced police interactions downtown by 50%, providing supportive housing in the city of Vernon. And when the issue of public safety is front of mind, absolutely. When the issue of public safety is front of mind for so many British Columbians, knowing that housing can help break that cycle, especially housing with supports, can help break that cycle that people are in and out of jail, in and out of our courts, is huge. And congratulations to Vernon for your work on that. I announced yesterday, and our housing minister, Marie Rankin, introduced legislation on two separate housing initiatives. The first is around the rules that govern stratas in our province. So for buildings that were built before 2010, they're permitted to have rent restrictions in place, prohibiting people from renting out their units. And there's a journalist from Kamloops, Shane Woodford, who told a reporter about his family's story. So he was working at Radio NL, and they decided to move to Kamloops or to Denmark, and they reached an agreement with their strata that they would be able to rent it out. And as soon as they landed in Denmark, the strata contacted them and said, "We did say that you were going to be allowed to rent out your condo, but we've changed our mind, and you're not able to rent it out anymore." They had to evict their tenant, and the unit sits empty. And I know that for all of us, we see the housing crisis every day up close. We can't leave any housing on the table. And I know there's some anxiety among some strata owner groups about, well, what if we get a bad tenant and so on. Stratas will be able to appear at the residential tenancy branch and address those issues. But boy, to have someone on Craigslist searching for a place to rent and to have an empty condo that Shane's family wants to rent out sitting there in the middle of a housing crisis, we need every single unit we can get immediately for people in British Columbia. I know everyone in this room knows that. So, some of the announcement yesterday was cleanup work. I got a call from, at my constituency office and then as Minister for Housing, a couple that was pregnant with a child. And they lived in a building that had a strata rule that the only residents who are allowed to live in the building must be 19 years of age or older. And they're like, the letter that I got in the Minister of Housing office was like, is it legal? Like, is this not discriminatory that when we have a baby that we get kicked out of our building? I was like, of course, that's got to be illegal. That can't be a legitimate rule in Britain. No, totally legal. completely acceptable, and a rule that apparently was not seen as discriminatory against young families. And that we got rid of that rule yesterday as well, once that legislation passes. And we have to have a long-range view when it comes to housing. Everyone in this room knows how long it takes to get from assembling the plan, getting the players together, grabbing the funding from here and there and putting it together, and the donations and the commitment to the board, and how long it takes to open that housing. And to be grappling, I ran into the folks from Unity. Laurel's here. There was an amazing proposal in Surrey for housing for adults with disabilities, proposed for Surrey, and they got everything together, all the funding, all the approvals and everything, and they got to City Hall, and they put it forward, and it was voted down by one vote. And it was just like unbelievable to me that happened. And through their advocacy, they got commitments from all the mayoral candidates in the Surrey election that was going to pass. I understand they're at the public hearing stage now. So congratulations to them for their advocacy. Everyone from Unity, way to go to raise public awareness about this. But that can't be the case, right? You can't work overtime to assemble something that's a tribute to the community, that is the blood, sweat, and tears of so many dedicated people, all the pots of government funding. You've got the costs locked down, you've got the contractors in, and then you get rejected at the steps of City Hall for reasons that you do not understand. And to be honest, I have a lot of empathy for the city councillors and mayors that are put in this position. They get recommendations from staff, they have angry neighbors coming, they're getting letters from this side, from that side, and it's very easy to be incredibly pressured in that situation. That's why a piece of legislation we introduced yesterday is to restructure the relationship between cities and the province when it comes to housing, that we are going to set out targets developed in partnership with municipalities about delivering housing, and all kinds of housing that cities need, which could include affordable housing, rental housing, supportive housing, emergency shelters. What does the community need? And the cities and the province will work together to deliver on that housing. It might be money. I was just talking to the mayor of Terrace. He's like, we are on side, we're ready to go, but we need support on vital infrastructure to build the housing that we need. Absolutely. Absolutely, the province is there to partner with you to deliver that housing, because we are in a housing crisis. Whatever it is that is blocking and preventing the housing from getting built, so it doesn't come down to a decision at a public hearing where you've done all your work and then you get rejected. It comes down to a coordinated plan, working together, where your project is encouraged by the city because it helps them meet the target so that they can unlock funds from the provincial government for things every community needs, for the swimming pools, for the trails, for the arenas, for the things that make communities great. Your project is a way to make the community stronger, and it's seen that way by local leaders. That's the shift we need, and that's what this proposed legislation will do. Now, some of you, I imagine a few of you, are quickly scanning back to see, because during the leadership campaign, I made a number of commitments to British Columbians about how we were going to go after the housing crisis. And those plans are very reliant on the people in this room. One of those specific proposals is around a housing acquisition strategy. We're doing the work on developing that right now. The idea is simple, and full credit to Housing Central for advocating for this, for helping design it, for working on it, because the idea is simple. When you're in a hole, like we are in relation to housing, you gotta stop digging. We can't afford to lose any affordable rental housing in this province. And there's no feeling like the feeling that a tenant has when they wake up in the morning and they open the drapes and there's a giant for sale sign hammered into the lawn out front of the building. What is this going to mean for me? Am I going to be evicted? Or my rent's going to go up? Is the building going to be torn down? What's going to happen? And the people who feel the most intense anxiety in a lot of these older buildings, I can say this in this room, the old MERB buildings, right? A lot of people who live in those buildings, they're seniors. and they've been living there for decades. Their full security network, their safety network, the grocery store they know, where their healthcare providers are, all in that community. So they're not just losing a home, they're losing all of their connections. And we're seeing more and more seniors showing up in our homeless numbers, and it's incredibly alarming to everybody, including me. Having a fund where a nonprofit organization can identify a building that's for sale, purchase that building, use that building and preserve that building for affordable housing going forward. The province can support you in getting funding, take out funding so that the rents will sustain you. And then ultimately, you may be able to redevelop that site, make sure that the tenants are looked after, add more units, putting that affordable housing stock into the nonprofit ecosystem will preserve it forever. And that is what we need to do with affordable housing in our province for generations. It can't be the whims of one government to decide to sell all the social housing sites that we're going to be built on to try to pretend the budget is balanced. That can't be the way. We need your partnership to make sure that affordable housing stays affordable regardless of what is happening within government. And I'm excited to partner with you on that. Now, I do have some news for you. It's not huge news, but it is significant news because it is you know that housing has been central for our government since we were elected. Everything from addressing speculation in the housing market to making sure that there's resources available to address homelessness, encampments, and so on. A lot of work has been done. We all know so much more to do. In my opinion, it is vital that we have a minister around the cabinet table that has one job and one focus only, which is to deliver on housing. And that's why for the first time, imagine this, for the first time in British Columbia's history, we will have a dedicated Minister of Housing that is only focused on housing and delivering housing for British Columbians across the province. That will help us deliver for people. I know it's a technical change, but it is key to have a person that is focused on working with you, working with the sector, and I'm so excited for that work to continue and expand. You know, for our family, for myself, a lot changed when my son was born and when my daughter was born 5 years later. You know, all the time, Kaylee and I are thinking about what's her future going to be like? What's our future going to be like in this province? We think about issues like, of course, climate change, the challenge of our generation. We think about where are they going to live? Are they going to have decent housing? Are they going to have housing where they can support a family of their own if they choose to do that? Where are we going to live? Seniors, you know, where's the seniors' housing going to be with an aging population? Housing is so central. And I know that everyone in this room and all British Columbians share a vision of our province where everybody has a good home, everybody has a decent place to live, that is the cornerstone of how we provide services, how our provinces grow. We cannot have a strong economy unless we have a strong home for British Columbians. Going it alone doesn't work. If there's one thing that we learned during the pandemic, the answer to these problems is working together. And you are a key part of how we're going to work together to deliver this. I know you have challenges. I know you have strains. I'm going to work with you on that. And we are going to deliver together the most ambitious housing plan in North America. We're going to make it happen together. And I am so excited to work with you. Let's get to work. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Mabel Elmore, the Parliamentary Secretary for Senior Services and Long-Term Care, and your event MC today. I'm honored to be here on the unceded territory of the Lekwungen people, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And this event is being live streamed on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It's now my honor to invite Elder Butch Dick to offer a welcome.
Hai squachel siam siya asa yuchelipton chileas an laquangan. Good day, my friends and family. My First Nation name is Yuchelipton, and I'm from the Songhees Nation. Asi am nush jelicha, asi am nush walakwa, haishkwa kwansana techel laquangan tanuch, haichka siam naquilia. And that's a typical welcome, to our nation, to our lands. And we'd like to extend our gratitude to this House for constantly recognizing the fact that it's traditional territory of the Lekwungen people. I must admit that before I came here, I didn't know what Bill 47 was. But realizing when I read the papers, how much we need to take care of the people that take care of us. I can't show enough gratitude to not only Vic General, but Royal Jubilee Hospital and Adnac. As I went through an amputation 4 years ago, and the care that I received at Vic General especially was just amazing. I can't say enough for all the people that work there and how much I appreciate each and every one of them. And Royal Jubilee, I spent time there for many health issues. But also, last Christmas, my wife was diagnosed with throat cancer. And she's at the cancer clinic with chemotherapy and radiation treatment. But 3 months ago, she was all clear. And that's because that's directly because of the treatment that she received and the caring that she received. It was like so many arms around you when you go to the hospital in every aspect. And I couldn't say enough when I left Adnac finally to put on my prosthetic and walk out of there. And it's because of them that I could do that. So with my family and with all our health issues, they're just about gone. Because, and it's not the end of health issues, we know that. But on behalf of my family, I want to thank the health care people that are here today. As we say, we lift up our hands to you and show our deepest love and appreciation for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder Butch Dick, for your inspiring words, and you're welcome. And it's fantastic to see so many of my colleagues here today involved in this work, representatives from the Hospital Employees Union, the public health sector, and many others present here at the Hall of Honor. So I'd like to ask you to give a round of applause to welcome our guest speakers. So I'll ask you to wait till the end and then welcome everyone. We've got our Premier, David Eby. We've got our Health Minister, Adrian Dix. We've got Mina Brossard from the Hospital Employees Union, Clarissa Hicap, housekeeper, Vancouver General Hospital, Darcy Leeworthy, food services worker, Royal Jubilee Hospital, Cora Mojica, food service worker, Vancouver General Hospital, and Sarah Inslee, support services manager, Victoria General Hospital. Let's give them a big round. Friends, we're gathered here today to celebrate the 4th anniversary of the passing of Bill 47 legislation in Parliament. Legislation which was instrumental in strengthening healthcare in our province for patients, families, and especially seniors and people with disabilities by bringing previously contracted out workers back to the public system. Since Bill 47 came into effect through regulation in 2019, thousands of workers have been repatriated and now benefit from better jobs, more stability, and improved benefits. This is truly something to be proud of. With all of that in mind, it's my pleasure to invite Premier David Eby to the stage.
Thanks so much, Mabel. I'll start by acknowledging we're on the territory of the Kwungan-speaking peoples, and thank you very much, Butch, for starting us on such a good day with those personal stories about healthcare and how healthcare workers have supported your family in times of crisis. It was wonderful to hear, and thank you for welcoming us here today. It's just so great to be here with you today. It's such a celebration of important work. I want to take a moment to reflect on those leaders who helped us get here. I'm looking at our health minister. He worked so closely with Premier Horgan. This was a core priority of Adrian's to get this done. And I just wanted to say we have the best health minister in Canada who understands we have to deliver for healthcare workers. We have to support our healthcare workers. Exceptional. And sitting beside him, Mina is here. Politicians don't act in a vacuum. We need advocates, we need champions who fight, and the HEU fought for years on this issue, 4 years, and never gave up. And I want to recognize the work of the HEU and thank Mina for being here today and all the HEU members. And I saved them to the end because you are the people who make a difference. Darcy, Clarissa, Cora, Sarah, the work that you do for British Columbians, delivering every day under stressful circumstances, food, a clean room, the basics to make sure that their hospital stay is as short as possible and they come out better than they went in. It's not possible without your work. You are the champions on the front line. Thank you for delivering for British Columbians every day. Now, as some of you will know, my wife Kaylee is a nurse who became a family doctor, and she's practicing in Vancouver. She knows from practicing as a nurse in rural BC, practicing as a doctor in rural BC, and now in Vancouver, that she could not do her work without the important services delivered by HEU members, delivered by frontline workers in our healthcare system. It is a team effort. Often people think about the doctors and the nurses and the specialists, but every single worker is required to deliver healthcare in this province. Every single worker who delivers healthcare deserves to be treated as a valued member of our public healthcare system. And for too long, that just wasn't the case in our province. Almost 20 years ago, in this building, a law was passed that gutted healthcare collective agreements that protected those workers. And those laws, in destroying those protections for the critical workers in our healthcare system, it paved the way for years of contracting out, flipping contracts, and relentless layoffs. 8,000 people lost their jobs and their benefits. 8,000 people. Most of those people were women, and most of those people were people of color. It was the largest mass firing in BC history. And some of the most vulnerable workers in our healthcare sector were then asked to apply for the jobs they already had, except they were asked to apply at half the pay. It was wrong. 4 years ago today, Premier Horgan, Minister Dix, HEU worked together to start to right that wrong. Bill 47 was passed to repeal those unfair anti-worker laws in their entirety. To the credit of every single member of the legislature, every member, all the parties in the legislature, it passed unanimously. This began a process of repatriating housekeeping and food service contracts back to health authorities. It marked the beginning of my predecessor, John Horgan's work to reverse those failed privatization policies that simply did not work to deliver high-quality care for British Columbians. That change delivered fairness for workers and better health care for British Columbians. Since the passage of that bill, over 4,600 health workers have returned to the public sector. It's amazing. They returned with fairer wages, stronger protections, and renewed benefits for them and for their families. Now, John told me it was one of his proudest moments as Premier, that bill, with good reason. This is an important part of his legacy of making life better for people in our province, and it is my honor to stand here as Premier to recognize that work that he did. To all of those coming back to the public sector, I say welcome home. It's an honor to celebrate this special occasion with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier Eby. Today is certainly a cause for celebration, not only for the repatriated workers and their families, but for all of us. Because when healthcare workers have peace of mind that their jobs are stable and they're getting the support they need from their teams, all of us benefit. I'd like to take a moment, as referenced by Premier Eby, to recognize the leadership of our former Premier, John Horgan, who's unable to join us today, but he's followed the progress of the repatriation closely. And he's delivered on his promise to fight for justice for these workers with the support of our Health Minister. Please join me in welcoming Health Minister Adrian Dix.
I think it's inevitable I'm going to fall off. I wanted to start by acknowledging, of course, the Lekwungen-speaking people, and to thank Elder Dick for his welcome. I think that this day and this recognition, my main thought, there's always politics in these things. There's a real difference. This has been, for me and for many of the people in this room, something that we worked on for well over a decade to see happen. But I really feel gratitude. You know, the workers we're talking about who were laid off worked in our public health system for decades without pension or job security or support, who keep our hospitals clean and put food, and deliver food for patients and staff, who do all of the work that makes a hospital run. And we were in March 2020, and we declared a pandemic. And I walked down that street outside, the street with all the cars on it. There were no cars on it. And people who had been treated with disrespect for 15 years, when everybody was afraid to go into work, went into work, cleaned their hospitals, kept our health system running. At a time when the unknown was great and fear was highest, they were there for us. And I think that, therefore, my main thought today is to express gratitude to everyone involved, because gratitude is what's merited from all of us, all the people of BC. Gratitude, of course, to people who've led on this question, my colleague, the Minister of Labour, Harry Baines, who has led and fought for working people his entire life and made this a singular part of his mission when we got the opportunity to be elected to government. Gratitude to my colleague, Jennifer Whiteside, who's not here today and is dealing with some things today, but she is, as everyone in this room knows, one of the primary reasons why this day is occurring, a leader in our province that has made and delivered justice for workers everywhere. And I would say also, finally, and most importantly, as I say, gratitude. We did it, Cora, you know? We did it. It goes without saying that we need to treat people fairly, because we need people in our healthcare system, and Bill 29, even in its own terms, makes no sense. It never did make any sense. It goes without saying to say that. But the people who worked in those circumstances never gave up on the political process, on their role as activists, on their fellow workers. And so I leave to say 4,601 workers repatriated, an end to contract flipping. When we brought in single-site orders, we ensured that everybody was lifted up. These are extraordinary victories and also what every single person was due. Every single person was due. This is what fighting for justice and being in government's all about. This is what fighting for justice and being in a union is all about. And this is what fighting for justice as a citizen, as a worker is all about. I am so proud of all of you. I am so proud of all of you. This is your victory, not my victory, your victory, and the victory for the people of BC for justice. I'm so proud of you today, so proud to celebrate this anniversary. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. I know you've poured your soul into this work, and we're grateful. Another key partner in repatriating workers under Bill 47 is the Health Employees Union, the Hospital Employees Union. And here to speak on their behalf is Mina Brassard, the Secretary Business Manager. Welcome, Mina.
Okay, this duel is making me nervous. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Elder Butch-Dick, for welcoming us to your nation's territory and for the words you have shared with us today. And I want to thank you, Premier Eby and Minister Dix, for making the time for us for this event during a week of long days and nights in the legislature. 4 years ago, Bill 47 was passed by the legislature by all parties in the House. It repealed legislation from the early 2000s that had gutted healthcare collective agreements and paved the way for the massive contracting out and privatization of healthcare services and jobs. Thousands of workers, overwhelmingly women, were fired from their jobs as hospital housekeepers and dietary workers. Global corporations offered them their jobs back for half the wages with fewer benefits and no pensions. And overnight, decent family-supporting jobs were turned into precarious jobs. And an entire generation of healthcare workers were thrust to the margins of the workforce while these corporations profited from their poverty. Many were forced to take a second or third job in order to survive. And I know that many of you know these workers in your own communities, our aunties and our uncles, our neighbors and friends. And let's be frank, these privatization policies were clearly discriminatory in their impact. It was women and racialized workers who paid the price. And over many years, these workers organized, they bargained, and they campaigned for justice and for economic security. And when contracts were flipped, they reorganized and bargained again. We fought those laws all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, which in 2007 struck down provisions that violated the rights of our members and established for the first time that collective bargaining is a charter-protected right for all workers. But there's no real progress without allies, and we had allies. Jenny Kwan and Joy McPhail, who fought these laws in the legislature, and every NDP leader since, who in opposition and then in government committed to repealing these laws and restoring justice to these workers. Carol James, Adrian Dix, John Horgan. And in 2018, you delivered. And Bill 47 was more than an act of the legislature repealing bad laws. It was an act of solidarity with workers who had been marginalized and shoved to the side. It was an act of recognition that these workers play a critical role in delivering health care, and that reuniting them with the healthcare teams means better health care. And it was an act of intention, a signal that we would make life better for workers and for patients, and we did. And I've had a great honor over the last year to take part in repatriation celebrations at hospitals across the island and the Lower Mainland, as we have welcomed close to 5,000 workers back to public sector employment. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with workers who've told me that their lives are better and more secure because of the work we've done together. How they've been able to quit those second and third jobs, spend more time with their kids, worry less about retirement, that they finally feel valued and honored as members of the reunited healthcare team. Now, we have much left to do to reverse the impact of privatization on healthcare, and we especially have much to do to fix our long-term care system, which has also been weakened by the privatization policies. But today, I am so grateful for Bill 47 and all that it has meant as we've joined together to build a stronger healthcare system that British Columbians can depend on and which values all workers on its front lines. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Mina. The work done by the HU on behalf of the people of BC has really been outstanding. We appreciate that. And of course, the real people being impacted by this. And at this time, I'd like to invite Clarissa Hicap, a housekeeper from Vancouver Coastal Health, to say a few words. Come join us, Clarissa.
Thank you, everyone. This is my first time to be here, so I'm just, bear with me. And I bring my friend Atikora with me. So I've been a housekeeper and a food services worker at Vancouver General Hospital since 2003. I've been experienced a lot of working for private contractors. I went through contract flipping, where I was fired and I had to reapply for my job. I also had to get a second job, and we had to fight with the private companies to get a proper PPE during the COVID time. This has really hurt, and my co-workers over the years. We were returned to the public sector and in the health authority just 3 weeks ago in housekeeping. Thank you. I work with mostly immigrants, and I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for listening to us. The first thing we have noticed working for the health authority is the big improvement in our wages and benefits. I am very, very thankful and grateful to BC and DP government. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clarissa. Great job. And we know how much a change this has made and you and all of your colleagues' lives. Next, please welcome Darcy Leaworthy. He's a food services worker from Island Health. Darcy.
Hi, my name's Darcy Leaworthy. I was a food service worker at Royal Jubilee Hospital for the last 17 years. It's been an honor to be invited here to make this opportunity to tell my experiences. I've been around long and been both working for the contracts and now in-house. I can tell you firsthand there was a good reason why we advocated and supported the transition under Bill 47 and why today is a reason for celebration. So, I will tell you a little bit about the private sector. Private sector wages were very low with large workloads. Training was minimal, which made it difficult to get new hires. Most years working as essential service level. Most years we worked at essential service levels, which increased a huge fatigue factor, with possibility of mistakes in patient dietary requirements. This in turn made this become a transient job. People did not stay. We have long-term employees that were there because they were dedicated to the patient's needs. Management, before they were very intimidating and threatening to workers. The company treated the workers with minimal respect. Supplies and essential equipment was always low, which made it difficult for employees to perform their duties for patients. Now that we are back in-house, new hires are happening more frequently, especially younger workers. They see a future with things such as a more livable wage, a pension, proper training periods, which lead to less fatigue and less chances to errors with which has led to better care with patients by having the time to treat them with the dignity and compassion they deserve. Nowadays, supplies and equipment are readily available. There is a more positive atmosphere at the workplace and major improvement to care of patients' needs. With new management, they are very supportive, positive coaching, and reinforcement and compassion to the employees. I would like to thank the BC for government for implementing Bill 47. And again, thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks very much, Darcy. We really appreciate you and your colleagues, everyone, being here today to join us in the celebration. Next, I'd like to invite my friend Cora Mahika, who's a food service worker at Vancouver General Hospital. Cora.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cora Mahika, working at Vancouver General Hospital as a dietary aide for 18 years. I am one of the 4,000 plus workers brought back in-house. For us at VGH, we were back September 2nd. I still remember at the HEU 2018 convention, when we were all watching the video, and Jennifer Whiteside, who is now the Ministry of Education, was announcing that Bill 47 was passed, that all service workers will be back in-house. Everyone in the room were jumping, hugging, crying with joy. That was never expected. So after that, we waited, and then waited, wondering when will this happen. Some of our members were so anxious, knowing when will it happen. Then, on August 2021, Adrian Dix, our Minister of Health, announced that we will be back in-house. That day, while I was watching, tears flowing, because I cannot believe the dream that we've been waiting for is coming true. This really helped our coworkers. We don't need to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Most of my coworkers were telling me, Cora, we did it. And I said, yeah, we did it all. We did it. For the hard work that everyone put together, for the patience and the perseverance of the workers, and to our HEU family, especially to our HEU provincial executive, who were always there guiding us, answering our questions. We did it, really. Thank you for the NDP, BC NDP government for keeping your promise, for bringing us back in-house, and especially to Premier Eby and Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, and to Jennifer Whiteside. Your leadership was awesome. And also to John Horgan, thank you, thank you. We cannot thank you enough, really, for making this, the workers have better life and bringing us back in-house to a one big family. It's true what the saying says, that when there's a storm, there's a rainbow. That when we work together in unity, solidarity, we win and can achieve. Because in diversity is our strength, unity is our power. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cora. And I'm so happy to hear how the legislation has made a difference in your life. I'd now like to welcome our final speaker, last but not least, Sarah Inslee, a support services manager at Victoria General Hospital. Sarah.
Up here. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Inslee. I'm a manager for environmental support services at Victoria General Hospital. Once upon a time, though, I was a 22-year-old new to Victoria and went to a job fair for a new privatization for housekeeping in the hospitals. And I was there on day one, and over 7 years I worked my way up through the company, and I realized that I was halfway up a ladder that I never had any intention of climbing. And I started applying for Island Health and the facilities that I was working in through some of the connections that I had made as a housekeeper. And I'd been an HEU employee with Island Health for 12 years after that. And 4 years ago, when I heard that Bill 47 had passed, I just thought, good for them. Good for them. I knew I was still working in the facility, so I still saw my old coworkers every day. They, keeping me posted about what was happening, and I was so happy to hear that this was coming down the road for them. The union had been fighting for them. There was lots of activism among the HEU members, and I was just so happy for them. And then a few years later, I saw a posting for the ESS manager, and I was like, this is full circle for me. I know where they're coming from. I've developed some relationships and skills, and I'm familiar with the Island Health background of it now, and this is a role that I can excel in. And on day one, when we were having our repatriation event, and I showed up there, and I was looking around, and I was like, there's like a dozen people in this room that were on day one with me when we, took over. And there was one person in that room, Rada Dubrovic, who had lost her job when it was privatized, stayed the whole 18 years, and is still my go-to girl in surgical daycare OR now, And I remember being in surgical daycare OR with her, and I was happy to be there. I was happy to have this new job. I was happy to have a job that was minimum wage at the time, I think was $7.50 an hour or something, $7.15. I was making $10.51 an hour. But it dawned on me while I was cleaning with her one day, yesterday, she was doing this job for just under $19 an hour. And today she's doing it for $10.51. How demoralizing that must have been for her to go to work and be doing the exact same task for less money, less benefits, less job security. I mean, we were a contracted company, so if they have a contract for 7 years, that's great. You have job security for 7 years, and then it's all up in the air. And anyways, on my first day, I had a meeting with the staff, and I said, I know that this feels the same. I know that this feels same, but it's different. It is. You're not working for a company anymore that is there to turn a profit. You have better benefits. You have sick pay that accrues every year. You don't have to have that paid out every year, up to 1,120 hours. You need to have surgery. You don't need to go on medical EI. You don't need to pay your benefits. It's a short-term disability for you. You have a pension plan for the first time. And most importantly, you're working for a public sector, and they care about you, and they're providing a service to your community and your counterparts. And that is their primary goal. So I just want to thank, every person that was involved in that, the HEU leadership, Minister Dix, John Horgan, the NDP government as a whole, and most importantly, every one of those members who fought for years to get back what they deserved all along.
All right, thanks, Sarah, for sharing your remarks, kind of full circle. Here we are. And so this brings us to the conclusion of the formal part of our event. We're going to have a cake cutting ceremony now, and I'd like to invite our guests.
Okay, so we heard a few things. One about, housing. Premier Eby is working hard to make sure that we have affordable housing. He's not making up excuses about, there isn't enough supply to meet the demand or anything like that. He's actually taking some action that is going to present that that supply to meet the demand for the housing necessary for people, and to protect what supply is there, so that people just can't simply be tossed out onto the street, and that something can't be sold, and then you wind up again evicted and homeless because of things that your landlord decided to do. So there's a lot of work that Premier Eby is actually doing, and to protect housing and to protect things so that we have a warm, safe place to live. There is also some other talk about that in the news about the fact that the BC NDP government might be facing a $5 billion surplus, and again, it is up to the government to actually make sure that money gets spent so that it doesn't wind up designated to something that doesn't actually help the public. So we look forward to hearing more about how, if the $5 billion truly exists, and how the BC NDP government with new Premier David Eby will actually take care of that. So there was an anniversary celebrated over Bill 47, and with that celebration day, we heard from some of the workers, healthcare workers, and not just doctors and nurses, other support people, those who work in the kitchen, housekeeping, about what moving their jobs into the public sector away from the private sector actually means to them. And it's some pretty interesting stories, and one does actually have to wonder about what kind of contractors were actually hired, and what that contract process looked like, that you weren't looking to bring a contract company in if it was from a private sector on a long-term basis, where they would actually be doing the contracted job, or managing the workers on a long-term basis, and how they were allowed to just cut people's salaries the way they did many years ago. So the introduction of Bill 47, and with the 4th anniversary of it being celebrated, does sound like a happy and good thing for those who, we all got to make a couple dollars here and there just to be able to pay our bills. So that's always a good thing when people are protected. So again, thank you for listening to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I am your host, Michael Clogs, and there's a subscribe button near you. Find it, click it, so you can keep listening. We will talk to everybody later. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.